She's the crown jewel of the Pacific Northwest, Mount Rainier, a towering tribute to nature and all its beauty. The Cascades bow at her majesty. For over a century, climbers have risked their lives to get to the top. Many of them have come up short. And no climber or team of climbers has conquered this route in the dead of winter. Never. It's called Sunset Ridge. Now a team of 12 comes to Rainier, trying to beat the odds and Mother Nature on their way to Sunset Ridge. You'll go with them on this historic journey, witnessing the true power of nature and the human spirit in their struggle for the summit. And now, Channel 11's Perry Cooper.
Growing up in Seattle, I always remember Mount Rainier as being that big brother that overlooked all of us. And I remember referring to it as part of the family, almost by its first name, if you will. Saying to people, have you seen the mountain? Is the mountain out today? It was like our personal weather forecast. We knew if the mountain was out, it was going to be a beautiful day. And on those picture postcard perfect days, I remember driving down the freeway and looking up and just going, wow. Now, I don't ever remember completely taking Mount Rainier for granted when I was a kid, but I do remember after being gone out of the state with another job for about 10 years, I gained a much greater appreciation for that 14,000-footer. Like thousands of people who live in Seattle, I did more looking at Rainier than thinking about climbing it. Sure, it would be interesting, but I never seriously ever planned to do it until this last winter, and it was no ordinary climb. Our goal is one of the points we see every day from the north end of the mountain, but it's rarely climbed, Sunset Ridge on the northwest face. Myself and photographer Scott Wallace had never done any mountain climbing before, and in 120 years of scaling Mount Rainier, no one had ever climbed Sunset Ridge in the winter.
Oh, it's heaven, for sure. It's definitely, you know, a piece of heaven.
Known as Tacoma by the Indians, the first white man to discover it, Captain George Vancouver, named it after his British admiral, Rainier. The name became controversial as a few balked at naming the mountain after someone who captured an American ship in the Revolutionary War. Indian lore spoke of evil spirits living in a lake of fire on Rainier's summit. First surveyed at only 12,300 feet, the first white man to reach the summit was Hazard Stevens in 1870. He was the son of Washington's first territorial governor and a Civil War veteran who earned the Congressional Medal of Honor. During an anniversary of the climb, he and partner Philemon Van Trump held the flag they took to the summit. Stevens later repeated his climb at age 63. As climbing became popular in the 1920s, lines formed along Rainier's slopes like its own glaciers. Women even made the summit dressed in skirts.
This is a very old scrapbook.
Since then, the lure of Rainier has drawn climbers again and again. Dr. Paul Gersman of Puyallup made his first summit of Rainier before he was 20, back in 1943.
We didn't have plastic back then, and not even tarps.
The only climbing gear available came from Army surplus, and only the rich had sleeping bags.
After World War II, there were some tarps available, but they didn't keep out any rain. They leaked like a sieve.
Pennants in Dr. Gersman's office bear witness to a lifetime of climbing, including Chimborazo, McKinley, and Everest. But it's nearby Rainier that shared his life like a family member. He's summited the mountain about 50 times, including 2 years ago at age 71. Why all this climbing?
I have no reasonable, rational answer for that one. It's a drive. They're compelled, and it's a passion.
I've already put your sleeping bag in here.
Okay.
And I got a 10 in the bottom. Okay, the lightest 10.
Jim Yoder is another one who's been drawn by the mountain's powerful presence. A climber for 30 years, he's been after a winter ascent never before accomplished. In 8 years, he's been turned back 3 times.
You know, shoot, I've climbed Mount Rainier 39 times, and it seems like I've tried it 150 times. Yeah, because of the weather.
Our route, Sunset Ridge, was one of the last paths to be climbed on the mountain. Its first ascent came in 1938, nearly 70 years after Stevens' climb. We do have a bit of history on our side. During the first winter ascent ever on the mountain, a news photographer joined in on that climb. His name was Charles Perryman. Geologically, Mount Rainier began forming some 500,000 or 1 million years ago. At one time, it was about 1,000 feet higher than it is now, before volcanic activity destroyed that top about 6,000 years ago. And remember those numbers you memorized as a kid for the height of Mount Rainier? Well, you're going to have to change them. New surveys have added 1 foot to the mountain summit. It's now 14,411 feet. As many as 5,000 people will summit Mount Rainier every year, but most of those will do that during the summer. We were trying to make our climb in the dead of winter, and 2 of those people going on the climb had no climbing experience whatsoever, myself and photographer Scott Wallace. We started our training for all of this back in October. I don't think either one of us realized how difficult it would be.
Usually you don't never fall in a crevasse this deep. If you did do that, you guys are doing it wrong.
Sure, comfort the amateurs.
Now you can lean back.
Training to climb the big rock of Rainier, we started on the relatively little Spire Rock in Tacoma. Pressicking, as it's called, is for the worst case scenario if we fell into a crevasse. Actually, rock climbing used to be part of mountaineering before its recent pull as a sport of its own.
You know, like I've climbed Mount Rainier tons of times, and the only time I've really wanted to do this is when I was practicing.
Dryland training took us to an urban hike of Pete's Mountain near Buckley.
When you get higher, you kind of breathe faster. But when you start breathing faster, what you do is you take one big deep breath, and then you let it go out.
Most of this helped to prepare us aerobically and show us dogs are in better shape for this. Every weekend hiker has heard of the idea of layering. Here we are finding the practical use of all of that, and that's what these clothes are designed for. Whether you're getting heated up as you're hiking or it turns into a hotter day than you expected, already you can see that I've taken off my gloves. That's cooled me off substantially. You can take off your hat and that'll do the same thing, although you don't want to show your hair. Or you can help zip down your jacket and that'll bring the wind through and cool you off in a hurry too. Clothes, we found, were no little thing.
The harsher the environment, it's exponential how important this stuff is.
Every outdoor supply shop is a maze of the latest must-have jackets, gloves, and supplies. And they're expensive. Fleece has replaced the long-used wool. It's softer, more compact, and doesn't soak up water.
90% of my climbs on Rainier every summer, this is all I wear, all the way to the top and down, because it takes care of everything. Yeah. They're a miracle.
But we're heading out in the winter, and thanks to a sponsor, taking the best available, including Gore-Tex outer shells, pants, and plastic climbing boots. Combined with our climbing gear, each one of us will be outfitted with nearly $5,000 of gear.
You notice I'm putting my poles in front of me to keep that.
The mode of transportation for Rainier's winter wonderland is snowshoes.
New stuff, what you kind of do is push down with your heels, and you can kind of weight the snowshoe, and you float a lot more.
A little experimentation showed us how deep a struggle this would be without snowshoes.
It's like here, I'm floating on top, you're up to...
Breaking trail in snowshoes, we seem to disturb winter's white painting, turning the head of some rare wildlife. This black fox monitored our progress in November as he himself was changing colors to match winter's blanket.
If you just notice walking up here, there's not hardly any tracks around here. You know, we're the only ones up here. And when you're up on that mountainside, you know, at 14,000 feet, you know, you're totally by yourself.
After 4 months of training, we were ready to get started with what we were training for. There are 2 reasons Sunset Ridge has never been climbed before in the winter. Number 1 is weather. It has to be perfect. Number 2 is timing. You have to be ready to drop everything and go to the mountain when the weather is perfect. We gave ourselves a 4-week window in January and February. The first 2 weeks, the weather was not perfect. On Monday of the 3rd week, they said, let's go.
The stuff you're not going to use for a long time, put in the bottom.
Okay.
The stuff you may need to get to.
Okay.
And the climb, put on top.
Okay. As the morning commute begins on the day of our departure, we begin packing our gear. Sponsors have provided us with food and equipment for the 6-day expedition. I added the gummy bears. Staple. Photographer Scott Wallace readies a lightweight digital camera we'll use on the mountain. On this February morning, the weather is perfect.
We skirt around to the right of it, and that's where I didn't like it last time we were up there. That's where I got scared, but it wasn't snow covered.
The aim is Sunset Ridge, one of only a few routes that is yet to be conquered under the cover of winter.
Throw it up on your knee.
And to top it off, 2 rookies are going along. Photographer Scott Wallace and me. What do we figure we're carrying here, Jim? How much? Between 50 and 80 pounds?
Yeah.
It's really not that heavy. It's just not loaded very well.
And I'm sure I'm carrying the 80. Right now it is about 1:30 in the afternoon. We're taking off from the trailhead. Our idea today is we have got 9 miles to get to base camp. Today we're going to try and go as far as we can, hopefully halfway, and tomorrow we'll make the rest of it. To climb up Rainier from this northwest side, you actually have to go down for the first 4 miles. Conditions couldn't be any better as there is no snow on the initial trail. But it hasn't made the walk any shorter. At our first night's camp, we've barely seen the snow that will be our week-long companion. For now, that's a warming thought. Our route to the mountain is up the South Mowich River Basin, the same route the first white explorer used to hunt for medicinal herbs. Medicine would be a good thing for me at this point, as we're still a day's walk from the mountain's glaciers. My photographer and I are both beginning to feel the effects of shin bite from the consecutive 8 hours of climbing in plastic boots. Ice is forming along the rocks as the elevation gets higher, making for slippery footing. The crusty snow is another good sign for us, and we're able to ditch our snowshoes, lightening our packs and making the walk easier. Just getting there is the main deterrent to climbers reaching Sunset Ridge.
Sunset Ridge only gets climbed a couple times a year. And like last year, I think it only got climbed once. The year before that, not even at all.
This long hike also allows us to see parts of Rainier that most people don't get a chance to experience. Shoveling snow will be our evening routine for the next 3 nights. Tents are set up in platforms carved in the glaciers. That lightweight gear we carried up is transformed into what will keep us warm for the night. It is 5 o'clock on the evening of day 2. We're at our first mountain camp at about 6,500 feet on the mountain. As you look down the valley, you can see the Mowich River Valley in which we came up today. We traveled about 3 miles, didn't get as far as we'd hoped, and we will have to go to our high camp at 9,700 feet tomorrow. Our biggest worry now is what ends nearly 2/3 of attempts at Rainier's summit, the weather.
We don't have any wind here, but up there in base camp it's windy because you can see the clouds moving around like that.
We could wait another day or 2 and still not get a shot at the goal.
Or if you don't make it, you just don't get very upset and just say, I gotta come back.
We've now discovered that the weather on Mount Rainier is unpredictable. At any time, fog can come in and ruin an entire day. We're actually a little bit behind schedule because we're not only climbing, we're also having to shoot pictures along the way, and we've slowed the troop down a bit. At this point, we hope Mother Nature doesn't slow us down further.
Okay, everybody, let's go!
Like right now, avalanche is really low. It could slab, like they said, slab. Not with that. There ain't that much snow on it. If it had more weight on it, it would slab.
Weather concerns eased as we began day 3 on the mountain, although the top was still hiding in a cloud.
Like if we were in our snowshoes right now, it'd be scary, you know, because then there'd be too much snow here.
So what you have to watch out for is just in areas like this, or you could get a small slab coming down, but I don't think we've got enough snow here, Jim, and the crust is only a couple inches. You can get like a 6, 8 inch, 12 inch crust sometime. That whole thing will come down.
Yeah, we couldn't get any better than this right now.
Working in 2 groups, we started the traverse to high camp from 5,000 to 9,000 feet. Minimizing the steeper angles of the slopes, our team leaders break trail in a switchback pattern. Crampons are now 24 of our closest sharp-edged friends, the spikes burying their grip into the ever-steepening mountains. The ice axe repeats in the same manner as one coordinated balancing act. It makes a numbing monotony of thousands of steps. For me, I don't even really like to look ahead much. I find if I concentrate on the steps, the task does not seem so daunting.
I do. I'll count to 100 before I look up. Just to get, and I don't always make that, so sometimes I get to like 30 and oh, okay, 1, 2.
Forget all the aches and the pains. And just totally numb out and forget everything. And just think, one more step, one more step, one more step. Then before you know it, you're where you want to be.
We make high camp under the watchful eye of Rainier's summit, getting ready for a short night before attacking the ridge.
Every time you go up, I get a natural high.
This is, I think, being alive. Because you're with the elements and you're out pretty much alone and you're left to your own devices for your own survival. You just don't go to the 7-Eleven up here.
At 9,000 feet, we are higher than Mount St. Helens, and the kaleidoscope of scenery is mesmerizing. As the moon rides the night into darkness, we rustle from our tents at 2 a.m. This is where our try at the summit starts, in the black, with miners' headlamps. Obscured on the peak, we'll head west of base camp, then virtually straight up for over 4,000 feet.
It's 5:30 in the morning now, 3.5 hours into walking up in the middle of the dark. Went up once, one route, wrong way. We're gonna have to backtrack and go off to the opposite side.
A touch of morning light turns the snow blue as we get our first look at what we've climbed up in the dark. The pink of the sunrise is only briefly admired. 40 and 45 degree slopes are now the norm, not the exception.
It's pretty damn steep right here. Boy, some of those holes collapsed too on us.
Our pace intensifies in order to make the ridge and get back down before dark. That means fewer rests.
It's okay to be panting here, right? Oh, yeah. Okay.
It will take us 10.5 hours, seemingly racing the sun to each of our summits.
Here we are at our final push to the top of the mountain. This is the top end of Sunset Ridge. We will go around this corner and get to the very top of Mount Rainier. Already today we've gone about 4,000 feet. Right now at the 12,000 foot level.
Our steps are more deliberate as the altitude sucks out more oxygen. Walking sideways, the crampons must pick into tougher, icier sections.
Shoot.
At 1 in the afternoon, we take the final steps to the top of Sunset Ridge, our goal accomplished. But the feeling is exhaustion.
I don't know if it's called beating the mountain or not, but I feel dead.
Our view from here is incredible. To the north, we see Mount Baker and Mount Glacier. To the south, St. Helens, Adams, and all the way to Oregon's Mount Hood and Jefferson. We can barely see where we started.
We got the best conditions I've ever seen for Mount Rainier.
I've had a lot of hobbies in my life, and mountaineering seems to be a very fulfilling one.
The challenge, just pushing yourself, seeing how far you can push yourself, for one, and just seeing, you know, just do it because it's there.
If you can't sing about it, it's not worth the trip.
This is Colonial Peak.
The pictures of a 6-day trip shared around a kitchen table will now last a lifetime.
Hey, quit gabbing in the kitchen. Let's get in here. This is when we started for the summit, and you notice in the background the sky is blue, so we did get lucky on the summit day.
Gathering to share the memories of our trip, we have a unique adventure that connects us with a dozen new people.
That's one thing about climbing is it's a team sport, and you learn the people who you were with for 6 days in a row.
I mean, it was definitely committing. We were up there, it was cold. Everyone had warm sleeping bags but me.
Weeks later, we're still amazed at our luck with the weather.
Since we've been trying it for 8 years, I don't ever remember having that long of a spell.
That was the only break this winter. It was the only break, period.
With time, the stories will get taller and the slopes will be steeper. But there's no changing the fact one big mountain brought together this small group in the first ascent of a ridge called Sunset.
That gives me a sense of adventure. I mean, that you really feel like you're a part of something spectacular.
It's now been about 6 weeks since we made our climb, plenty of time to reflect on what exactly we did. Would I ever try it again? Nope, at least not that route. Maybe something easier, although I will say everybody else on our expedition troop, we're already planning the next climb they were going to do the next week. For me, I think one mountain is enough. We'd also like to share a couple of other sidelights to our trip. On our way down, it took us 4 hours to get down from the summit, and it took us 2 days to get back to the original trail from high camp. But that was actually some of the most fun stuff, because we were able to slide down some of the slopes on our rear ends.
Just go, just go, just go. Don't use your tool, there you go. Put your feet together and lean forward. There you go. Oh, I feel a few ice bumps there. There you go, keep going.
Yes, break it
through. Hey, it goes even further.
It's Jim
I got
Yoder,
stuck.
Mountain Man. Come on down, Jim. How was the ride? Yoo-hoo! Was it a good one?
Oh, it was great.
Then after 6 days of climbing a mountain, we finally get back to our car, and we've got a flat tire.
See, an ice axe, you need an ice axe, Perry. You gotta buy an ice axe now.
Other than the tire we lost with the truck, everything else came off the mountain safely. No one was hurt, and everybody got back to the start of the trail. And we also came back with that little piece of history, the first ever winter ascent of Sunset Ridge. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.